All right. We are right at the top of the order at the hour. Can you all hear me okay? All right. Sorry, I was receiving messages from New Road that my audio was not connected. So hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our 12th web session. I'm glad that you can hear me. So thank you, Helena. Thank you, Matt. Today is a jam-packed day. We have 3 teams presenting their team demos, but today is the, as Jamie likes to say, season finale of our spring 2021 xAPI cohort. Today, we will be going through 3 teams demos. So we have xAPI in live code, Team Goodish, and Team Slack. Each team has about 20 minutes to share their presentation and have Q&A. Some of them have presentations, some of them will be doing screen shares. As we wrap up this spring cohort, we have 621 folks registered, which is awesome. Behind the screen today, you have myself as the host. We also have Aaron and Jamie, our producers on our team. Again, this wraps up our semester, and we will, there's one more time to demonstrate your learning, and that would be at the xAPI party, but you should have already submitted a proposal for that. So we're gonna get started with our first team, which is xAPI in live code. So I'm gonna invite Brian on the screen with me, and I'll present their presentation now. And I can press play, or you can press play, Brian, whatever you prefer.
Is a learning record provider that can send an xAPI statement to a learning record store. First, we should mention
All right. It's looking like I'm not seeing. It seems like, Brian, you've been responding to the chat questions pretty much throughout your presentation, and I'm not seeing any more questions. If there are no other questions for Team xAPI and LifeCode, that was really awesome. You got lots of positive affirmation around recording your demo, working as a team. I really appreciate you taking the extra time to have that recorded demo. I think that was really dope to see everybody's perspective in the team.
All right, thank you.
With that, I'm going to call up Miranda for Team Goodish. If you're ready, your presentation is posted. Miranda, if you're talking, you're muted.
Thank you. Helena, the amazing as well. Okay. And will we be able to navigate through this, Jess? I'm not seeing a...
Do you see at the bottom of the slides? Let me see.
There we go.
Yeah.
That works. Hi, everyone. My name is Miranda George. I'm from Team Goodish. I'm presenting along with Helena, the amazing. I don't know, Helena, if you want to give your full name, that's up to you. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you to the producers for helping us do this. And thanks to all of you in the cohort for watching. As I said, we're Team Goodish. We're a new team in xAPI Cohort that wanted to explore the possibilities of xAPI with diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, namely how we can help others interrupt their biases prior to important conversations regarding promotion and compensation. This is our team. Shout out to our team, wherever you are. We had the most diverse team, and Helena will talk to you about that. Not just diverse as far as what our backgrounds are, but with our skills. We also wanted to shout out to a few people who have come in and out, Kara and Olga, who presented to us some ideas that did help inform how we did this project. So I wanted to say thank you to them as well. Helena, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. The next slide.
Oh, no, right here.
Okay. Anyway, my name is Helena Smith, not Helena the Amazing. I just put that on here for the cohort. But I am an instructional designer on this team, and we have a few other people that we want to just talk about a little bit, the types of backgrounds that the team members have, which made this even really more interesting. We had an outstanding programmer. We have some people that work in the area of human resources, which gave us some really good insight. And of course, there were other instructional designers on the team as well. And I want to mention, we also have, I would say, musical artist on this team. She doesn't talk about it very much, but she's blinking. But yeah, we have like our backgrounds is pretty diverse, and it really was great to, while we went through the entire process, to really learn from each other. So when we started the process out, we didn't really know exactly like what we wanted to focus in on. So because when we talk about unconscious bias, it can go across so many different spectrums. We can talk about, with sexuality, we can talk about with race, we can talk about with disabilities, and to really provide more of a focus to get this proof of concept, we said, let's talk about something that's really being discussed a lot today, which is racial bias. And as you know, DEI is like something that is being talked about quite a bit in the workplace. And there are a lot of DEI strategies going on. And DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we want to make sure that we're looking at areas about representation and making sure that everyone is included in giving their perspectives, their ideas, making sure that we're looking at things from, as fair as possible, and we're being impartial, and that everyone has access, and that everyone is included, that there is collaboration across the board, and that there is support from all levels, and that there is a sense of trust. And with racial biases, just like any other prejudice, it can be very costly. So we wanted to try to come up with something that could hopefully present itself to the person that may not realize that their decision making, their thinking, their thought process is actually very damaging and could be very costly for the company.
Yes, thank you, Helena. So how can data help? Up top, you'll see a quote from Siri Chalazi and Iris Bonet, hope I did right by their names, from the Harvard Business Review, entitled How to Best Use Data to Meet Your DEI Goals. And when done right, the collection, analysis, and disclosure of diversity data indeed holds the promise of being a powerful lever for progress. And what they suggest in the article is that with the right data that is simplified for the intended audience, leveraged to empower the right people, and monitored for accountability, you could reach a positive impact regarding your DEI initiatives. Okay, so bias is a huge topic, as Helena said, that goes without saying. So we did focus on racial bias, and namely when racial bias occurs in the sourcing practices of hiring professionals, when you're finding a new candidate for hire. After doing some research, we found some problems that were systemic, like this is a systemic issue and it requires a systemic solution from the top. And, not everything can be handled by learning and development. However, can xAPI help? That's the question we wanted to find the answer to. Can xAPI be used to help recruiters interrupt racial bias in the process of sourcing candidates for hire?
So when we started I would say the if you will, the storyboarding, if you will, we wanted to figure out ways to help those hiring professionals. We got some really good insight from a couple of people on the team that are actually working in the area of human resources. And we went through this series of questioning, like, okay, we want to identify and remove racial bias that's in job advertisements. People may not realize it, but there could be job biases. Job advertisements can, create, a tone of, okay, maybe I'm not the right person for that position. We want them to be aware that that particular advertisement might create disparate impact on a certain group of people. We want to break down the barriers for BIPOC when pursuing positions that offer upward mobility. Remain aware of what the DEI goals are for that company. And then we want to interrupt, this is a big one for me, to interrupt racial biases related to names. I've heard many times, a person will look at a name and automatically, make assumptions based on that name about the best roles that would be suited for them. And we also want to interrupt the racial bias related to role selection. Just because a person has a certain name does not mean they're not qualified for certain types of positions. So that was something that was really important when we're in the upfront stages of, going through the recruitment process. So how can we do this? We want to help the business leaders identify those performance gaps regarding a recruiter's ability to source diverse candidates. Where are they sourcing these candidates? How are they going about the sourcing process? We want to also look at trends in recruiter behaviors to inform further training. If you're looking at your analytics, what is it actually showing you? Are you paying attention to that at all? Determine the exact makeup of the barrier to those diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. So we want to see what's happening with the sourcing process versus what's happening with when the person comes to an interview, and then what happens on the onboarding process? What happens when the person is actually at the company? Are they feeling included? Do they feel comfortable? Do they have that support system in place?
Yes, we want to make sure, where we're focusing, it could also be used to find out if sourcing is indeed the issue. And if it doesn't, if more focus, we can determine whether focus needs to be placed in the next part of recruiting a new hire, or the next part after that, the onboarding. So that is how with all that information, that is how we came to the idea of a chatbot for Goodish people. Why Goodish? Well, we also wanted to address the challenging nature of approaching this conversation. Conversations about racial bias or racism in general can be uncomfortable. They can bring up feelings of shame, even in the most well-meaning of people. They can feel guilty, and these feelings can shut down these conversations. So we advocate being good-ish, so that there's room to be gooder. Sorry for that crime against grammar. But that way, there's room for growth. We can all work toward being better while softening this emotional barrier that often slows or halts progress. We want the solution to, we wanted to see if this solution could offer training, if it could be used as a reinforcement tool, if it could be used to offer support to recruiters, and of course, data. So with that said, we want to show you a little bit about where the bot could live, how it could be accessed, and what it looks like right now. So what you see here is, and hopefully you can see it blown up, is a page from, or a window in iCIMS. That is an AHR information system, just like Workday is an HRIS as well. And this was one part that was humbling for me, because we had to figure out how could this be a part of the recruiter's workflow, not just this thing that lives separately from their workflow that maybe a lot of time will pass before they actually need this information, but how can we give them this information right within the workflow of their job? What is the most frictionless way to do this, and what are the possibilities? And until the perfect situation is designed, like a universal bot that lives within a template, as you can see on the right, that's the template for creating a job within iCIMS. Until we have that sort of solution, we found a workaround, which was in the notes tab of this particular page, you can leave an instruction to go to the other tab on the menu, which can send you to an external link, which is where we could have the user sent to the bot itself. If you are not a part of a company that has, or if your company does not have an HRIS system, how would that, how would they access that then? There's a lot of interactive PDF use when it comes to getting information from hiring managers. And so there could be an HR only section with an external link that leads them to this chatbot. Those are just some of the things that we're thinking about, and we will brainstorm further. So this is our chatbot, and this is a little bit of a lie. This is kind of what our bot looks like. We're still dealing with some interface solutions. Right now, it's just one long slab of text, and you have to scroll down to see everything. But once you open up the chatbot, it's going to say hello and ask for your name. Then once you enter your name, it's going to ask for an email address, and this is how we get the statement that the user initiated the bot. After that, we talk a little bit. We just wanted to throw in some information and test out the bot's ability to allow the user to answer questions. So we put in this first iteration, a self-assessment question, which asks them, about their confidence level, about their knowledge levels. Just are they aware that it's an issue, and do they feel strongly about their ability to interrupt it? Another aspect of our bot includes questions on the actual job itself. We found information in our research that, for example, one particular statistic from McKinsey and Company, we found that a lot of Black employees are given jobs that have their frontline jobs. There's no room for growth. Maybe they're caught in the frontline to manager cycle and never given opportunities where they are they have upward mobility or better pay. So we wanted to include questions on the job itself so that whoever's handling this data can make the links between how the recruiter is sourcing and their awareness and the information on the job itself. Say the company has a goal to make sure that they recruit people of color into mid-management or executive positions. This is a place where they can be asked for that information. So we put that one question on career level in there. And then, of course, we want the user to be able to talk to us. So we wanted to test out the user being able to leave comments, and we're still working that out to where they can kind of just leave comment after comment after comment after comment. We may do some further design to, let them comment one after the other. But at the end, we wanted to make sure we could complete the bot, have the user complete the bot, know that it's done, and say bye-bye. So that's right now, it's not this one window where the text scrolls up just yet, but we hope to get there by xAPI Party. And over to Helena for talking data.
This is Watershed. We haven't done a lot of work looking at all of the statements and compiling information based on the statements that have been sent to Watershed, but we kind of want to give, you've never seen Watershed before. I know in the previous presentation you saw Score and Cloud. This one here, I've used this before with Team Alexa. You can break out your data in different ways to tell the story that you think needs to be told. So this is a sample of some of the statements we recently sent and some of the information that was laid out. So let's kind of look at our statements itself. So this is the basic layout. Of course, we have our actor, we have our verb, and we have our object, which is, in this case, the great chatbot. Now, I was glad to hear that we could even drill down even further in getting more information, because one of my concerns was like, okay, how are we going to identify specifically what questions and how the person is answering the question, or what selection they're given? And I was really happy to see that our great programmer on our team really helped out in fine-tuning those areas of concern. So if you look on this particular slide, Michael, what did Michael do? Michael answered the question. Well, which question did he answer? He answered question number 1. We can drill down to, yeah, Miranda, go Will. We can drill down to actually identify the object ID of, all right, question 6 was answered. 10 people answered question 6 in this particular manner. 5 answered question 7 in this particular manner. I think that this gives a lot more context to exactly what the bot is, for the statements that's being sent through the bot. So when so when it gets to the LRS, we can actually look and see and make some determinations about, okay, if we're seeing that there is an issue in a particular area, let's say question 7, because I know what question 7 is, has to do with names. We can try to see if there can be some training around the area of dealing with biases against a person, a person's name. Okay, I think that's it for that. Miranda, you want to add anything else to this? Because I know I just have question 7 in my head because that was my question during the
You're doing great. No, that's precisely the kind of data we wanted to get out of each of the questions. And of course, we're tinkering with the data more in the future. So when we start playing with the data and how it's visualized in Watershed, we hope to make it clear to whoever is handling the data, yes, this person is aware of name bias and is going to be able to interrupt it, or this person's unsure, time to help this person, and a communication pattern can begin to solve that issue. We also have comments. We wanted the user to be able to talk to us, so this is what that statement looked like. And I know we're squeezed for time, so I'm going to try to move through all this quickly. Now, our process, pretty simple. We did some initial discussion and research. A couple of our team members, I believe she's on this call, hi Meg, helped us zero in on an actual topic, on an actual instance for this proof of concept. We wanted to find out more about what the recruiter's doing and what it looks like when they're in an HRIS, and Cassandra was super helpful with that. She was our HR person. We then went about designing the bot. We used Google Docs, we used Google Slides. We really tried to get it to where it, what it would look like, as close to what it would look like, at least how we desire it to look. So initially it looks kind of like an iPhone text message window. So we were going for that. Maybe we'll get there when we get there. So that initial part was done. Once we were done with that, and once we knew what we wanted to put in there, Will went to town with the coding, and we'll talk about some of the tools we used in this next slide. So as mentioned, we used Google Drive and all of those applications within. A couple of us used code editors like Visual Studio Code and Atom. We tested our bot in Chrome. Of course, we had all of our code placed in GitHub for anyone to be able to download. If you want to check it out, go right over to Team Goodish in GitHub and check out our repository. We found an initial template to use in CodePen and then started creating custom code. And then, of course, we used Watershed to as our LRS to get our data in there. And some of the challenges, of course, I mentioned a couple of them. Where does this tool live? How is it going to fit into the workflow in a non-clunky way? How can we get the messaging to be succinct and, actually help the user at the same time? How can we refine the way our data looks, how we're sending our data? And we realized this is a long-term project, nothing we could finish in a couple of weeks, but we got something working, which is what we wanted. We got to a first iteration of the bot. We want to do more with the interface. And of course, we want to include a database so that we can keep some of this information. So those are in for, future experiments. Also, keeping in mind that this solution doesn't work on its own. It could be a performance support tool, but to make and enact actual change, pairing this data with other data that is being monitored and checked and being relayed and communicated in a simple way, that's how it can be truly effective. So we are going to work on developing this further to improve the UX and UI, have more chat body features. And you all know I like to mess with the English language. I'm Texan. So, and then we want to brainstorm ways to evolve or build out this concept. So with that said, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let us know. And of course, join Team Goodish. We will react with a Carlton emoji if you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was a great presentation. I see lots of positive feedback in the chat. I don't see any questions. It looks like Joan had a question early on, but I'm gonna, in the interest of time, invite Brian, and then maybe you can answer Joan's questions in the chat. Joan asked a question around, and I just scrolled past it, the chat. Was about the data and how it was collected, if it was test data or if it was collected in a pilot. But welcome, Brian. I think that you're going to be sharing your screen, correct?
Yes, that's the plan.
So you should be able to go up to the tools, desktop share. There you are.
Start screen share. There you go. It's working. Thanks, Jess.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Wanzer. I am representing Team Slack today. And we'll be taking you through a little bit of the work that we did to get some information out of Slack into an LRS and kind of the process that we took, the tools that we used, pros and cons of the stuff that we ran into. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned everyone involved with the team: Matt, Melissa, Rob, Wendy, everybody else that was in the channel. I know a few are here with us on the call and probably are available to answer some questions along the way. And we'll definitely get to as many as I can at the end as well. So what we started with was thinking up some use cases. How might Slack be used in sort of a learning and development situation? What kind of data are we looking for? What are ways that learners and people are interacting with Slack, and what kind of impactful data can we find? So the first that we talked about was social learning. Participants involved in a learning program, having discussions after a session or in between sessions, responding to prompts, follow-up questions, lots of opportunities within Slack for that to happen. So we'd be interested in getting some information about how participants are engaging, which are, how often, that kind of thing. We also had a discussion about help center channels. So for example, at PitchBook, the company that I work at, we have a Slack channel where our sales folks can ask questions of the product team and get responses fairly quickly. There might be some interesting data there about who are people that are holding on to the information. We might want to document that. Other topics that are coming up regularly that are getting answered, but might be opportunities for training. Those kinds of things. Also, we're interested in resource and training access. So if after a training, a job aid is shared, how many people within Slack are looking at that and accessing that? As we are marketing our programs to an organization, are people using that link? Are people accessing them that way? At what rate? Those kinds of things. And then the final one that we discussed was one that Rob had brought up, this idea of a learning wallet, kind of tracking an individual's learning across Slack, and possibly other tools as well. But for example, our Slack instance for the cohort, there's lots of learning happening, articles being shared, questions being answered, that kind of thing. And while it's great to look at that as an organization, it's also interesting, for me as an individual to be able to take that information, demonstrate to others the information that I've learned, have a record of those topics and those kinds of things. So we decided to focus on one specific use case and try to start simple. So we went with the social learning aspect, really taking a look at the data of how people are interacting within a specific channel within Slack, how many people are sending messages, how often, what time, those kinds of things. So with that use case in mind, we took on this task to design and capture xAPI statements when a user posts a message in a specific Slack channel. So part one of our project was taking a look at sort of low development aspects. Can we get information? What kind of information can we get out of Slack? Is this possible? And then how do we create xAPI statements? What do those look like? So we use a tool called Zapier. If you're unfamiliar with Zapier, it takes a trigger event and then completes a action after that, kind of a if this then that kind of tool. So it has some integrations with some apps already. Both Slack and Watershed are apps that are already integrated with Zapier, which makes this process a heck of a lot easier. So essentially the way we set it up is that a trigger event happens in Slack. For us, obviously, it's a message being posted in a channel. Then the Zapier rules take some of that information, parse the information that we're getting out of Slack, create an xAPI statement that then gets deposited into our Watershed LRS. To go a little deeper into that, this is what the trigger looks like within Zapier. A couple of things that you have to set up and choose here. The first is selecting the type of event that you want to do. Again, for us, a message posted in a Slack channel. You select the Slack instance that you're looking for. It's worth noting that for this, you need to have administrator access to your Slack channel, so you can't just add this to any Slack channel that you want. You need to make sure that you have admin access. We created a sandbox. As Slack channels are free to create, we created a sandbox that the team used to send messages. Answer a few more questions when you set up the trigger, and then you grab a recent statement to be able to test. So a fairly easy setup there. I would also want to mention that the new message posted to this channel in Slack isn't the only event that can come up that can be used with Zapier. There's a few different other ones. A new message posted anywhere across the Slack instance, so not just in a specific channel. You can get a new @mention, a new emoji reaction, a new file uploaded, and there's a few more that are possible as well. From there, you set up the action that happens, it's probably a little small on your screen, but I can walk you through it. Same sort of setup in the fact that you select your watershed account, your endpoint, your secret, and your key. Make sure that all those connections happen. And then from there, the simple version is they break out each part of a statement for you to fill out. Only a few are required, but lots of opportunities for you to add information in. There's essentially two ways to add that information in. One is just sort of hard-coded in, so that each time that this trigger gets set up, this action will complete with that in mind. So for example, at the bottom of the screen, again, I know it's hard to see, but our verb was commented. So anytime this trigger happens, commented is going to be included as well. You can do that with lots of different of these fields along the page. But then the cool thing is that there's also opportunities to take that test message that you got as you set up your trigger and essentially map those fields of the information that we're getting from Slack into the xAPI statement. So for example, the actor fields, the first one is actor name, second one is actor email, third one is actor account name. We obviously don't want those to be hard coded in, right? We want to be able to see who the person is that is posting in that channel. So rather than having to create variables, work through that, you essentially just click on the field. You're given a list of all of the information that Zapier has gotten from Slack, and then be able to map a field together. So for example, the actor name, we used user real name. For the email, we used the user profile email. For the account name, there's an individual user ID that Slack presents. So the nice thing is that if Rob or if Wendy or Melissa or Matt go in and type, it's not going to be my name that comes up, it's going to be their name because that's the information that we're getting from Slack. So this provides the ability to be a little flexible. And again, it's really just a couple of clicks to find the right field and map those things. So once you get that all set up, you turn on your Zap. It starts looking for those triggers and completing those actions. You can send a few tests. And then this is a screenshot of one of the statements that we got to our watershed LRS that has all of the information. Again, some of this is hard-coded in, like our verb. Our object is flexible based on the channel. The name as well, obviously, is flexible based on the information. So we had success with this part, got some statements in. We just ran a few tests a few minutes ago to make sure that it was still working. All of those statements came in working successfully, which is great. So a couple of pros and cons to talk about with this solution. The first one is it's super easy to set up, and it doesn't require much coding at all. There are some opportunities within Zapier if you wanted to create a custom statement. You could do so, but the nice thing about Zapier is that it's fairly easy to pick up and is really just mapping a few fields, and their UI makes it very fairly simple. The cons is that it's expensive. They do have a free tier that's available, but it only has available 3 zaps and has a limit on the number of times that it's run, and you can run into that limit fairly quickly. There are paid tiers that are available, so obviously with that cost comes a benefit of not having to create custom solutions, which is super nice. The cons are that another con is that Watershed is the only LRS that is plug and play. There are possibilities potentially of having a post API. It's something I haven't tested out, so I'm not sure if you could work with other LRSs, but at least in the plug and play, click and map opportunities, Watershed is your only. Megan, to answer your question about getting text of the comment in the statement, we didn't in our first test. We decided really that the action itself was the more important thing and not necessarily the comment. However, that is information that Slack can send in those triggers and something that could be mapped as well. We just made the decision to be a little bit more simple in this first time around and didn't include that comment. So with those cons in mind for Zapier, we decided to take a look at a more custom solution, something that is a little bit more flexible and a little bit more scalable. To save us a little bit of money in using Zapier, wanted to find if there was a better solution. So the great thing that we were made aware of is that a lot of this work had already been done. Stefan Dvorak, about a year ago in Cohort, put together a Slack to xAPI connector that he made available as an open source project on GitHub. So that was great that we didn't have to start from scratch, that he had done a lot of the legwork there. Same sort of idea, gets a trigger happening from Slack, and then can send a statement to Watershed. So like I mentioned, this is an open source project that he has available on GitHub. More than happy to share that link. Also, feel free to join our channel. I believe it's pinned somewhere in there, and if not, I'll make sure I do that right after this call. But he has some great instructions set up about what to follow, the tools that you'll need. The nice thing about this is that it works with a few different LRSs, which he has tested, and can take multiple trigger events, not just the one that we had to use with Zapier. Which was wonderful. We had the opportunity to actually have Stefan on in one of our team meetings to walk us through his work, and actually got to walk us through the entire setup, which was a great resource for us, and great to see that it was working, and all of that kind of stuff. To give you kind of a quick idea, this is his image about how the connector works. You create a Slack bot, which you can create some event subscriptions. So you can choose a number of events that are happening within Slack, like a message being posted in a channel, a mention, right? All of the things that that could have been triggers in Zapier. You can set those up with a bot. And then that has an endpoint that's hooked up to this connector, and uses a bunch of different tools to install it. Lots of stuff happening in the middle that I'm not an expert enough to give you sort of the nitty gritty into each of that. But I think one thing to point out is that Stefan uses a database to store the Slack events. But then the nice thing is that that database also contains essentially the mapping of the fields of an event that's happening within Slack, and then what verb we're using, and then what object the statement is using, which provides some great flexibility that's not hard coded in. So for us to update, we just have to go back to that database, make some changes, add a new event, that kind of thing, which makes this super scalable. And then there's some conversion things that are happening, and then it gets sent off to the LRS. Again, he could give you better details about that. I don't have enough expertise there to give you kind of the nitty gritty. Unfortunately, after Stefan gave us some great information, the team was unable to install it in the way that he did. We ran into some issues just with our operating system. He's using Linux, we're using Windows, so there's a little bit of conversion that was happening there, and ran into some snags. I definitely think it's something that that the team might be interested in continuing in the fall, and really building that out, and being able to look at the number of different events that we could include. To touch on the pros and cons of this custom solution a little bit, definitely more scalable than Zapier. Stefan has somewhere between 15 and 20, I believe, different events that are coming in that are mapped to an xAPI statement, which is great. With Zapier, we can only use, we have to create one for each, and then it can get very expensive if you're looking for more than 3. And then, as I mentioned, the database aspect of it makes it super easy that once it's installed and once it's up and running, that database is the one that needs to be edited, and we don't have to go into the code and sort of start over, which makes it super easy to make edits. The cons, obviously, is that it requires some development skills. Again, the team struggled to put it together. We got pretty close, but unfortunately ran into a few snags that involved some Googling and some looking through Stack Overflow forums to see if we could figure it out. Didn't quite get there, and hopefully will in the next cohort. So that's all I've got. Happy to answer some questions. I've seen that the chat's been flowing, and I think some people in the team have been answering it. Feel free to hop into our Slack channel as well. We're all happy to continue this discussion, give you some information that, and things that we worked on, and happy to pass the buck to if anyone is excited about taking this on come the next cohort and continuing the work that we've done.
Awesome. Thank you, team, and thank you, Brian. Yeah, it looks like your team's been responding to some questions in the chat. And I'm not seeing any unanswered questions at this time. I know that we are a little over time, so I'm gonna just hop into some concluding thoughts for today. We have two big events coming up May 14th from 9 to 5 online. We have our xAPI party. We are no longer accepting proposals for submissions, but you can register as an attendee, and we will make sure session recordings are available afterwards for those who register. We also have the L&D download on May 21st. Both of those you can register at the same link. When you get to the Eventbrite page, you just select which conference you're interested in attending and you can register there. The last thing I want to say as we wrap up this season finale, Jamie, is that we've been spending some time listening to some jazz this semester as a way to close out every session. It has been really fun for me and also relaxing. And I appreciate the folks who have requested music and folks who have shared their favorite songs. I have one last song to share with everyone, and Bikey tweeted today. We have this artwork that was created by an artist, Amari, and it was an iterative process even throughout the semester to get this recapture of our semester together, and I think it's pretty dope. So go ahead and share that and support that young artist. But I'm going to play some Miles Davis today as we wrap up, and I hope that you have a great weekend, and I'll see you all at the party.